A young woman, barely 19, stepped toward what chroniclers would later call the most dangerous altar in Russian history, carrying inside her a poison that, rumor claimed, would claim her life within 15 days. Martha Okina could not have known that a simple draft offered by a mother desperate to secure her daughter's fertility might turn her wedding night into a death sentence. What should have been the consummation of imperial hopes became, according to court gossip, the spark for one of the most ferocious reprisals ever recorded in Moscow's annals. Ivan Ivth, history remembers him as Ivan the Terrible, believed his third bride had been murdered through a misguided act of maternal love. Letters whispered about in chancelleries spoke of quiet weapons hidden behind the curtains of the imperial chambers. Powders and tinctures said to cure, yet able to destroy without trace. 20 people, reports insisted, would pay with their lives for a mother's recklessness. A nobleman was even said to have been executed publicly in Red Square, while a crowd looked on in stunned silence. Whether every detail was true or embroidered, one thing was certain. The young Cyrena's sudden death fed the paranoia of a ruler already feared for merciless justice. These stories preserved in diplomatic notes, and the pages of later chroniclers describe how mercury, prized in the 16th century as a cure for venereal disease and an aid to conception, may have become the silent protagonist of a tragedy echoing through the centuries. The bridal chamber of 1571 was not only the scene of a Tsarina's demise, but, as writers later framed it, the birthplace of a monster who would plunge Russia into an empire of suspicion and dread. 15 days, the accounts insist, held more treachery, anguish, and consequence than decades of open war. This is the tale imperial healers preferred to bury, the one hidden beneath court records for more than 400 years. On that fateful table, salvation and ruin were said to lie side by side. A mother's gift transformed into the empire's funeral bell. Before we unpick how disaster unfolded, give this video a thumbs up if that opening revelation caught you off guard. And imagine, if you can, the despair of a mother realizing she had doomed her daughter while only trying to help. Subscribe so you won't miss the royal secret still waiting in Moscow's shadows. And in the comments, write the name of a queen, princess, or noblewoman you'd like us to investigate next. Whichever name gathers the most votes will become the focus of another explosive inquiry. Now, let us step back to the moment the stage was set for catastrophe. The year was 1571. Across the breadth of Russia, the Opry-Nenina Ivan's feared regime of secret police and punitive raids gripped the land in terror. The Tsar, then 41, sought stability through dynastic continuity. 2 years earlier, his second wife, Maria Tereyukovna, had died under circumstances some already called suspicious. With no robust male heir, Ivan launched what chroniclers described as the largest bridal contest Muscovy had yet seen. From forests near the White Sea to the plains beyond the Volga, envoys summoned more than 2,000 eligible maidens to the fortress of Alexandrovskaya Slota 100 kilometers from Moscow. The citadel, ringed by wooden walls and crowned with onion chapels, doubled as headquarters for the Tsar's dreaded bodyguard. Executions in its squares were said to be as common as daily meals, a grim reminder to the women who gathered there that the ruler's favor could be as lethal as his wrath. The selection followed strict Byzantine precedents handed down from Constantinople's emperors. Physicians inspected each candidate with almost forensic zeal, certifying purity, fertility, and robust health. Astrologers compared birth charts, searching the stars for signs of harmony or discord between maiden and monarch. At every stage, the field narrowed from 2,000 hopefuls to 24, then to 12 finalists. Foreign envoys watched these proceedings with unease. Venetian dispatches coded to evade interception spoke of a Tsar oscillating between pious gloom and unpredictable rages. To them, the choice of a new consort was not mere courtly ritual. It touched the balance of Eastern and Western power. A stable marriage might calm Ivan's temper and secure an orderly succession. A misstep could deepen the instability already rippling through his realm. On 26 June 1571, the final decision was announced. Martha Vasilva Sobrikina, daughter of a wealthy Novgorod merchant, was declared the victor of this imperial pageant. Contemporary accounts describe her as gentle yet composed, a figure who seemed to blend innocence with quiet intelligence, an ideal counterpart for a ruler seeking solace after grief. Yet within days of her triumph, ominous whispers circulated among attendants. Mara, they said, appeared pale and listless, her strength fading even as preparations for the wedding gathered pace. No physician at the time could diagnose her condition. Their prescriptions of herbs and prayers did little to halt the decline. Some claimed she had been overworked by ceremonial duties. Others suspected sorcery, or the malice of envious rivals. Later generations reading between the lines of surviving letters suggested another cause. A potion prepared by her anxious mother intended to guarantee fertility on the wedding night. According to these later narratives, the mixture contained mercury believed then to quicken conception, but capable in too great a dose of ravaging the body from within. Whether truth or legend, the story captured the imagination of historians and novelists alike, becoming part of the law surrounding Ivan's reign. Martha Subakina thus entered Russian history as both bride and enigma. Her brief passage from selection to sickness remains one of the court's most perplexing mysteries. A prologue to storms yet to break over Moscow. At 19, Martha Subakina embodied a radiance that court chroniclers called both divine and perilous. Her hair, they wrote, gleamed like molten gold, her eyes, deep and clear as northern lakes, held a calm that seemed to promise stability to a restless empire. Imperial physicians admired her strength, and considered her the best hope for producing vigorous heirs. She was the daughter of Vasily Sabakin, a wealthy merchant from Novgorod, whose fortune placed him among a rising class beginning to rival the old boy. Family connections, including a distant tie to Malyuda Skuratov, the feared lieutenant of Ivan Zaporniki, helped open the gates of Alexanderskaya Slobodka, where candidates vied for the honor of the Tsar's hand. To some observers, Mara symbolized a subtle revolution. Commerce and talent pressing against the barricades of hereditary privilege. She carried in her presence a hint that Muscovy's future might rest not only on bloodlines but on merit and enterprise. Facing her across the chasm of power was Ivan Vasilievich himself, a man whose legend was already blackened by suspicion and rage. At 41, he had buried 2 wives and 2 sons amid whispers of conspiracy and treachery. His frame, said to tower near 2M, gave him a commanding presence. Yet inside, he battled storms of insecurity and superstition. As ruler, he used calculated terror to keep nobles in line, staging executions as theater to display dominion over life and death. Each bereavement had deepened his obsession with a legitimate heir. Every marriage became a gamble for dynastic survival. To Ivan, Martha offered more than beauty or comfort. She was, or so envoys believed, the final chance to anchor the dynasty with an unassailable successor. But while courtiers prepared cated gowns and ceremonial crowns, other forces, invisible yet inexorable, were weaving a darker outcome. In Novgorod, Martha's mother, anxious about her daughter's health and fertility, turned to an old household remedy. Later tales insisted the potion contained mercury, an ingredient praised by village healers for stimulating conception but lethal in excess. She is said to have measured the dose with trembling hands, unaware that the very draught meant to secure a grandson for the throne could poison the girl she loved. The wedding on October 28, 1571 at the Trinity Church in Alexandrovskaya Slobodka should have displayed imperial triumph. Instead, it acquired the hue of an omen. Witnesses recalled that Mara, beneath the crimson weight of her bridal robes, looked frail, her cheeks drained of color. Attendants discreetly steadied her as she approached the altar. During the solemn exchange of vows, she twice swayed and collapsed. Priests hastened to interpret the fainting as mystical modesty. But the physicians nearby noted something more troubling. Tremors rippling through her limbs, perspiration slicking her brow and pupils unnaturally wide. They murmured of a dangerous imbalance in the body, perhaps a poison none of them could name. The feast meant to last until morning faltered before midnight. Dishes of roast swan and spiced honey stood untouched as concerns spread through the hall. Martha was escorted to the bridal apartments. Rooms arranged with lavish oriental splendor. Persian carpets thick over heated floors, braziers glowing with coals, incense coiling through the air. The scents meant to kindle desire merely cloaked the sour tang of illness. Ivan entered in ceremonial silk, expecting to claim his bride. Instead, he found a young woman fighting to remain conscious. Chroniclers say he paced the chamber, torn between anger and alarm, summoning physicians who brought phials of herbs and prayers but no remedy. The marriage night designed to secure the empire's future dissolved into vigil beside a stricken bride. Meanwhile, if later accounts are believed, the potion prepared days earlier had already begun its merciless work. Mercury absorbed into Martha's blood advanced silently, disrupting nerves, searing her stomach, undermining the very organs meant to bear children. No healer of the 16th century could have traced the connection between a mother's talisman and a Tsarina's sudden wasting. For 2 weeks, the court lived inside a tense stillness. Ivan, restless and sleepless, refused to leave her side for long. Some sources describe him kneeling in prayer. Others speak of furious interrogations. The Tsar demanding to know who dared harm his household. Servants whispered of hexes or secret enemies among the boyars. Physicians clung to simpler explanations. Exhaustion, a fever from travel. Yet none could halt her decline. On the 13th of November 1571, 15 days after the wedding, Martha Sobakina breathed her last in the Tsar's arms. Whether she whispered anything before dying is lost to history, but later storytellers imagined a final plea for her mother's forgiveness. Ivan's grief hardened almost instantly into rage. Convinced that hidden hands had poisoned his third wife, he launched what chroniclers later called a storm of vengeance. 20 people, attendants, medics, even distant relatives were seized for questioning. Some were tortured. A few rumors said met death in Red Square as an object lesson to traitors. Whether these accounts magnify or merely echo reality, they reflect the atmosphere of terror unleashed by the tragedy. That autumn, a bridal chamber meant to secure dynasties instead incubated the Tsar's most corrosive paranoia. The sudden loss of Martha Sobakina did more than darken one household. It pressed Ivan further toward the brutal vigilance that would shape the last years of his reign and stain Russian history with dread. The vengeance that followed Mara's death was as chilling as the rumors that caused it. Chroniclers tell how Mikey Tryuk, brother of the Tsar's late second wife, was dragged into Red Square before a sea of onlookers. There, according to the accounts, he was impaled alive, a spectacle that stretched for 3 unbearable hours. Chains clinked nearby where other prisoners watched, realizing the same agony awaited them. Basil Sabrikin, Martha's grieving father, avoided execution only because Ivan forced him into distant monastic exile. His sons were less fortunate. Records speak of beheadings justified by charges of witchcraft. What began as mourning swiftly became a purge driven by a ruler convinced that hidden enemies had stolen his bride. The investigation, led personally by Ivan, turned merciless. Torture chambers echoed with cries as servants, doctors, and kin were questioned about forbidden potions and sorcery. Interrogators pressed them to explain how a seemingly harmless remedy could slay a Tsarina. Testimonies pointed to Martha's mother, who, so the story went, had secretly mixed a potion to ensure her daughter's fertility. Its key ingredient, mercury, was celebrated by healers of the day for treating everything from skin ailments to infertility. To modern ears, it seems reckless. To 16th century minds, it was advanced science, a precious substance praised for restoring balance to the body. But by the time this confession surfaced, the scaffold had already claimed the innocent. Some captives were released only after brutal floggings. Others disappeared forever into the dungeons of the Kremlin. Ivan's wrath, once ignited, rarely cooled. Centuries later, scholars tried to untangle fact from legend. In 2009, forensic anthropologist cite unexamined remains attributed to Mara Sobakina. Testing revealed traces of mercury in the bones, supporting, though not conclusively proving the chronicler's tale of a lethal folk remedy. A facial reconstruction from the same study showed a young woman of striking delicacy, her features soft yet regal. The contrast between that serene image and her recorded fate only deepened the sense of tragedy. Martha's short life inspired art as well as history. Rimsky-Korsav's opera, The Tsar's Bride, and Lev May's drama of the same name drew on the story, wrapping it in music and poetry so the sorrow would outlive archives and chronicles. But behind the cultural legend lay a darker legacy. Ivan's grief hardened into a paranoia that reshaped an empire. Historians link the aftermath of Martha's death to Caesar's later atrocities. Policies and massacres that crushed towns, shattered noble families, and drenched Muscovy in fear. The episode seemed to confirm his belief that betrayal could lurk even in domestic walls, poisoning the cup meant to bless a dynasty. From that winter forward, Ivan tightened his grip on subjects and advisors alike, setting the stage for years of suspicion and bloodshed. All of it, the storytellers insist, traced back to a single act of misguided love. A mother's attempt to secure her daughter's happiness through medicine, whispered about in peasant cottages and courtly chambers alike. A few grains of mercury, passed in secrecy, became, in the law of the time, the quietest weapon history had known. What other secrets, one wonders, still hide in the sealed ledges of royal households? How many queens, princesses, or brides died from treatments thought to promise vitality or fertility? For every tragedy recorded, others surely slipped away without witness, buried with their victims beneath cathedral stones. Imagine for a moment the torment of Martha's mother, if she ever realized her gift had brought ruin instead of blessing. Picture the Tsar's household paralyzed between loyalty and fear as friends became suspects and physicians' remedies turned into evidence of treason. The tale is a reminder that beneath the splendor of crowns lay peril as lethal as any battlefield. The documents uncovered so far show only a fragment of the hidden history within royal medicine. They hint at dynasties redirected by powders, herbs, and tinctures meant to heal but capable of ending bloodlines. If Martha Subakina's tragedy has left you eager for the next revelation from the shadows of Europe's courts, make sure to subscribe and activate the bell so you'll know the moment we release new investigations. Share this story with anyone fascinated by the veiled scandals that shaped nations. And tell us below which detail unsettled you most. The possibility of a mother's accidental poisoning, the gruesome executions that followed, or the idea that a simple fertility recipe could unmake an empire. In upcoming episodes, we'll unearth further mysteries of royal bedchambers. Queens whose illnesses hid darker truths and medical customs that decided who would rule and who would vanish. 11. Martha's fate, as tragic as it is, may prove only the opening chapter in a long chronicle of hidden dangers that lurked behind palace doors. The next investigation promises revelations even more astonishing. Stay with us as we continue to unveil the secrets that once dictated love, death, and the destinies of crowns. Heat. 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 Give me image prompt for this video paragraph.